And welcome into another episode of Under Review. I, of course, am Steven, and your other host is Cole. He is here with me. We wanted to kind of stop and talk to you guys. We got to talk about the Super Bowl. We got to do a major preview, Cole, and talk everything from prop bets to who we think will win and what's the X factor. But in the meantime, before we talk about the Super Bowl, we also have some college basketball to talk. And then, of course, we always like to break down the latest and greatest news. Last week, I know we were talking about a lot of rumors with Bryan Harsin, but I think we got our answer of what is going to happen with Bryan Harsin today, Cole.
Yeah, I think we got our answer. And I think they kind of made it evident about where they think the situation was underlying. And I think Bryan Harsin really answered the bell as far as if these rumors were true. Because he did not back down from the buyout. And I think that was the big thing that came with Auburn was, they probably wanted the buyout to probably be lessened a little bit and, try and move forward. But Bryan Harsin, if he was truly guilty, I don't think he would have doubled down on the buyout if he was truly guilty. So him doubling down the buyout, I think just solidifies that these rumors probably were not true.
No.
And it might have just been just what they were, just rumors. Now, maybe some of these other little things about him kind of being harder on the program, not being such a soft coach, which is good. I'm not even saying that's a bad thing. I think that he has definitely rubbed some people the wrong way in this program. But I think that some of these people, and I think a lot of Auburn board, you see it on Twitter, you see it on Facebook, I think a lot of people are saying it was a kind of an awakening period. This was much needed for this Auburn program to be kind of like said, hey, look, this is a guy that's not going to just say yes. He's not going to be a yes man. He's going to get his guys. He wants to run the program the way he wants to. And I got to kind of admire that from Bryan Harsin. So whether or not some of these negative rumors are true, I think he pretty much answered that by not coming out and saying and apologize for anything and kind of doubling down and whatnot. I think we got our answer. I think this was pretty much just a power move by a lot of the board of trustees and a lot of the Auburn administration. I think Bryan Harsin said, no, I want to be the head coach of the football team. But I want to run the football program. I don't want to just be the guy who just listens for the football program.
No, I mean, I completely agree. I heard a take earlier today that maybe the NFL might be more of Harsin's speed to where he doesn't have to deal with the boosters or anything like that, or college students thinking he has a little bit too hard on them or anything like that. He can just kind of coach football because everything I've read about him and heard about him is that he's a good football coach. He's a good X's and O's guy and everything like that. He, of course, made a statement today. The university made a statement, said there was no findings or anything like that. The boosters and the university are separate in that, and that the university did their own investigation into all the rumors and everything like that, and nothing was found. Nothing had ground to stand on. And so, you said, I think it's just the big money guys saying that, hey, this is Allen Green's hire. He went behind our backs a little bit, and we're trying to get him out. We want to take our university, our power back here. But, of course, Harsin made a statement saying this is like his worst week ever. And that, this was, we saw the worst of the worst in some people, and then we saw the best.
He was
on
vacation while all this was happening, wasn't he?
He was. And that's got to be really tough when you're with your family. You're getting accused of having an affair just because people don't want to pay you $18.3 million or 18.6, whatever it was. But yeah, no, I think that moving forward, Harsin's just gonna, keep putting his head down and want to coach. I think Auburn's in for a very interesting year, though. This year will tell a lot about, if players are going to come up behind him and back him up a little bit, or if he's lost the grip on the program a little bit. I think time will tell, and I think this year will be a big year for Auburn football and kind of the state of them moving forward. Now, Cole, on the Auburn's rival side, we do have a little bit of news to talk about, not football related, but Alabama, of course, announces and kind of shows the plans for their new basketball arena that is coming up here. I'm not really sure where they're going to put it. I think there's an empty lot right now that's already empty. That is where they're planning on putting it. And then I don't think they announced necessarily a year or anything like that when this would be done. But we did get at least kind of a show of what it'll look like. And honestly, it looks like it's modeled off after a lot of Ole Miss Stadium. Of course, Alabama.
The pavilion, right? Yeah, it looks very similar to how it is. And of course, the outside kind of exposed in the middle part and whatnot, the open arena, and just it looks great, Stephen. I have to say, and it was partially due. I mean, this basketball team, of course, with Nate Oates is seeing more success, and of course, also anybody who's attended a game in the last few seasons can tell you Coleman Coliseum was due for an upgrade. I mean, this is honestly, to goodness, Stephen, it might be one of the worst basketball arenas in the SEC. Quite honestly, might be one of the worst ones.
To all Coleman, has against it, it does have the most seats. in the SEC.
It does.
So I think
it does.
So I think that was what the reason it stayed for so long is you could fit so many more
people. You could hang your
hat
on that for sure.
You could get a little bit cheaper tickets in the upper section, everything like that. But I think they modeled it as well. Going to Auburn and how difficult it is to play in Auburn this year. We talked about it several times. Just having all the students and having that lower section where the students go floor to floor. I know Greg Byrne talked about, or Greg Byrne is Alabama AD, right?
Yes.
Okay. I get
yes.
I get the SEC.
Greg Sankey.
I get them mixed up all the freaking time.
Yeah,
so
I want to make
sure. Greg Byrne said that it was
two Gregs, two really good Gregs.
That's what I'm saying.
Two different guys.
And they're both in the SEC. It's not fair. But anyways, I know Greg Byrne was talking about how they modeled it. His dad was the AD at Oregon back in the day, and they modeled a little bit after that stadium in the 90s as well, or the late 80s, 90s, Oregon Stadium. So, I mean, it looks very exciting. And then, of course, Greg Byrne also breaks the news that they are going to have alcohol at a basketball game, a men's basketball game, before the season ends. So they're going to get a little bit of a test going here to see what other.
And that's a good word to use, Stephen. I think that's a very good word, is a test. I think this is a very much so kind of a social experiment for Coleman Coliseum and moving to this new arena and how this alcohol sales will go. I mean, of course, you have to think the money will make the most sense for it, obviously. Now how will you monitor things? Of course, you got to increase security, I'm sure, and whatnot, and the staffing and whatnot. You'll have to have licenses for people to sell the alcohol and stuff. So it's going to change a lot of things. But I mean, the money's going to make the sense for it, because I mean,
as I say, it's
alcohol sales at SEC events. Come on, I mean, it's a no-brainer. I mean, as
far
as money goes,
you're gonna make a ton of money. It's just keeping the college kids in check is all it is.
Exactly,
and making sure you don't get those.
You're worried about. Right.
Make sure you don't get those fake IDs through and all that stuff. You don't want to have a story about that stuff like that. So, but hey, I mean, we already have other SEC venues doing it. It's obviously worked well for them. No major stories have come out of that, and I think college students, one way or the other, are gonna get drunk. If they're buying it from the stadium or they're packing it in their underwear, they're gonna figure out a way to drink some alcohol at some sporting events. So might as well make some money off of it this way. So that'll kind of wrap up the Alabama talk. Of course, we're looking forward to seeing how that test works and seeing if they can get it at potentially football.
If Bryant Denny's in the near future for that as well. I mean, that would be
I think
it'd be a foretelling.
As long as Alabama students or students in that area don't go off the hinges a little bit, I think you'll definitely see when they start bringing in that money that everybody will say, wow, why didn't we do this sooner? So, but in other news, kind of major news, we had the NBA trade deadline, which is a little weird to me that is happening during Super Bowl week. That's kind of weird. Feels like it kind of takes away. And then, of course, we had the All-Star game picks, however you want to call that. We had those. The draft,
the All-Star game draft.
That's what I was looking for, the draft. But I wanted to touch on the trade deadline. What major trades did you see in this trade deadline that you wanted to point out?
To be honest with you, Stephen, I didn't think that there was going to be a major trade period, because, I mean, obviously the biggest one is Harden to the 76ers. And of course, Simmons goes to the Nets. That's obviously the biggest one. But for a while there, we didn't think this trade was going to even happen, because it seemed like, Daryl Morey and the 76ers were just kind of just mulling it over if they were going to even make this move or not. So I think that's the biggest shocker, is that this actually happened. But I think this is a big power move for the East. I mean, because the Nets were obviously struggling. Now, there is talk that New York could be changing the vaccine mandate thing, so maybe Kyrie can play. So we'll see how the Simmons and how KD's health comes into play with all that. I mean, that could have an impact. But, I mean, this is going to impact the Sixers immediately. You're inheriting a guy who can average on a night 25, 8, and 8. I mean, James Harden is that kind of guy. And you're giving Joel Embiid, who's a potential MVP candidate, you're giving a guy who can go and score and can pass the basketball very well. So, I mean, how those pieces are going to mesh is going to be great. But obviously the most underrated trade, Stephen, I know you have it on the rundown here, CJ McCollum to the Pelicans, because the Pelicans are playing really good basketball right now. I mean, so you gain CJ McCollum, who's a 20-plus point kind of guy who can go and score and get his points. I mean, you're adding that to a Pelicans team that's already looking like a playoff team. So
no, and hey, I completely agree. I think that's a big move for the Pelicans to get a kind of veteran guard in that really young team in there. And of course, it all will hinge on whether or not we have a healthy Zion anytime this decade. That would be pretty cool to see.
Absolutely, 100%.
how well they can do with a healthy Zion, a Brandon Ingram, and a CJ McCollum And if they have any decent defense whatsoever, that would be interesting to see as well.
That'd be great too.
I think under the radar a little bit, the Mavs trading Kristaps Porzingis for Davis Bertans and Spencer Dinwiddie. I think that's a little bit underrated as well, just because we saw kind of the apex, I guess, of the Porzingis and Doncic duo there. But I think it'll be very interesting because you get a lot of
surprising that didn't work. I'm surprised that duo couldn't mesh well and things.
I don't know if you watched many of their games. I don't know if you watched many of their games, Cole, but in the playoffs, Porzingis just disappeared offensively. He was nowhere to be found.
It wasn't just last year. It's been multiple playoffs where he's disappeared.
And so I think that's kind of where they ran into is the playoffs. Porzingis is a no-show, and I think being able to
don't want to waste too many years of Doncic, of course. I mean, you don't want to waste too many years.
Being able to keep Tim Hardaway in the mix, and Spencer Dinwiddie has shown how good he is offensively, as well as Davis Bertans, who's a great three-point shooter, and I think he's close to 7 feet tall. So you still kind of get that Porzingis element in Bertans, but for a lot cheaper, you get another offensive player in Dinwiddie, and you get rid of Porzingis and able to maybe, hopefully, if you're a Mavs fan, move forward into the playoffs.
Maybe not the sexiest trade deadline ever, Stephen, but some big moves and some interesting moves for a lot of teams who are, like we're saying, are competitive for the playoffs and could potentially make some deep runs. So these were some good moves and maybe some necessary moves that needed to happen. So
yeah, did you see where Sabonis went? I forgot where he went.
I saw you put on the run. I am not actually sure. I saw where he got traded. I want to say actually, was it the Kings? Was it Sacramento?
That sounds right because I think it was like a 3-team trade. Marvin Bagley went somewhere else.
Yeah.
So I think you're right. I'm very surprised they moved him and not Miles Turner because I know the Pacers were trying to get rid of the two towers there with Sabonis and Turner and Turner seemed like the more likely trade candidate, even though I'd read following up or going into the trade deadline that wasn't looking likely because he hurt his foot. But I think honestly, you had the major trade that everybody wanted to see and Harden to the 76ers, Simmons to the Nets. We'll see how both of those projects work out in the long run. But I think you got all you wanted to. You got some fringe movements here and there, and you also got a major trade. So that's why people love the NBA trade deadline because you almost always get at least one major movement and shift in power.
And you get to watch the rest of the year how it all pans out at the All-Star break.
Exactly.
So
we get to pick the winners and losers later in the year, but right now everybody's winners because right now everybody has hope and excitement for their team.
Exactly.
So that'll carry us into some college basketball talk. We gotta talk about the games we mentioned last week and kind of go into how they actually panned out for Alabama, Auburn, and UAB, and then we can kind of do a little preview in their next game or so. I know we did like a 3-game preview on each team. So maybe just talk about kind of a recap of what's happened. Of course, the big one, the number 1 overall seed, Auburn. They lose a tough one at Arkansas. They have now lost only 2 games, both in overtime.
And so call the panic button, right? Hey, they lost 2 games. I mean, hey, everybody's in panic mode. Calm down. It's okay.
Both the good teams, and both just overtime games where Auburn didn't have the shooting.
They're undefeated in regulation, Stephen.
That's exactly right. Exactly right. So, Cole, what did you see from Auburn that kind of led to this loss at Arkansas, where Arkansas camped out the night before? I don't know if you saw that.
They did. And look, Bud Walton Arena was an atmosphere like I've never seen, Stephen. I mean, did you see it? I mean, they break the record, 20-something thousand people. I mean, that is just an unbelievable atmosphere for college basketball. They definitely showed up and gave a great home crowd. But what I saw from the game was, Stephen, just simply Auburn just didn't make some free throws. I mean, that what it boiled down to, I think they were 8 of 17 from the free throw line or something like that. It was something awful. I mean, so you're already on the road and and I hate to say this, but we all know going into another team's arena, when you're the home team, you're going to get a little bit more foul calls probably, and you're going to get some more free throw opportunities. So if you're Auburn, you have to take advantage of your chances at the free throw line. And they just didn't do that. And then Walker Kessler got into foul trouble early. I mean, Jabari Smith wasn't hitting his shots in the first half necessarily, but in the second half, he was. And the biggest criticism I have for Auburn right now is when a team is physical with them and they go outside of Auburn Arena, they've kind of looked a little small at times. And Wendell Green and guys like KD Johnson, they're taking the ball out of Jabari Smith's hands in critical moments of the game. Jabari Smith was like 2 of 2 from the 3 line, in the last 2 minutes of that second half. And for some reason, Wendell Green and KD Johnson take the ball out of his hands and don't give him the ball in the last few seconds to try and potentially win the game. Yeah, so that's my biggest problem. Is one of the biggest things I compare this to is when Oklahoma City had Russell Westbrook and Kevin Durant. And it seemed like a lot of times Russell Westbrook would take the ball out of Kevin Durant's hand when we all know he's the best player on that team. So my thing is, if you have Jabari Smith, who's a borderline, we all agree, I think, man, you both think, #1 overall pick in this year's draft, right? Why would you not have him take the shot when he can get any shot he wants to anytime? Why are you going to let a guy, even though Wendell Green's great, Katie Johnson, great. I mean, they're good players, but you have an all-time type of guy and you're not going to give him the last shot. I don't agree with that. So my big thing is give Jabari Smith and when he's on the court, use him. That's my biggest thing. Use him when he's off the court, he's resting, that's fine. But when he is on the court, you need to run your offense through him. Don't let Wendell Green and Katie Johnson just dribble the ball up top and then fire up a three. Or, Katie Johnson was a little aggressive on Tuesday night. He was very aggressive. That's why he got into foul trouble early. I think he was getting very flustered because the fouls just weren't going his way and whatnot. So he started playing a little too physical at times. So, which can happen. But my biggest takeaway was, hey, look, Walker Kessler is great player. And if it wasn't for Jabari Smith, Walker Kessler might be maybe the Naismith player of the year. But I mean, obviously Jabari Smith by far and away the guy. But
I completely agree. I think you definitely have to have Jabari Smith taking those last few shots, just feeding him the ball. I said it last week, Cole, his contested shot making is really what separates him from everybody else. Even though he's such a great player defensively and can move and can shoot, it's the contested shots that he makes continuously. It's not just once in a while. He makes them down, people with a hand down his throat, and he's making them no matter what. So I think that's the biggest separation.
Makes more like layups. I mean, it's just so easy.
Of course, we had that terrible last shot by Wendell Green in regulation that kind of led to the overtime. You don't want to go into overtime in another team's home stadium. It almost never works out for you. So, just needed a better shot there. And of course, you mentioned it, Walker Kessler foul trouble. I would argue, especially when teams are getting physical, that Walker Kessler is, we can say Jabari Smith's the best player. Walker Kessler might be the most important player because of the defense.
Sure.
The defensive, help he allows for everyone else. And then also, if he's going to step out, and he's made a few threes and continuously.
He made them against Arkansas. Yeah.
That's what I'm saying. If he's going to be able to step out and spread the floor even further when he's on offense,
for sure.
You got to keep him on the floor. So he's got to be able to stay out of foul trouble. And of course, especially on the road when, like you said, teams are going to get fouls go their way when they're the home team. So let's move on to Alabama. They have a tough loss against Kentucky at home. I think that me and you talked about when they had that 3-game stretch with Baylor, Auburn, Kentucky. I said 1 win. You said possibly 2. 2 would be marked as really successful. 1 would just be, okay, that's okay kind of thing. They got the 1. Of course, they have a terrible, terrible shooting day against Kentucky, 3 of 30 from the 3-point line. You're not going to win many games that way. Shackelford, of course, had flu-like symptoms, so that could have played into it a little bit. But the good news for Alabama is they get their shooting back a little bit versus Ole Miss. They kind of,
my goodness, did they ever?
They shoot the lights out. Shackelford has a 30-point game. I will say the main thing that stuck out to me in this game is Alabama, for all offense they showed, their defense still needs some work, Cole.
I think so too, Stephen. But here's the thing: when you're shooting so much and you're scoring so fast, of course your defense can kind of seem a little lackluster because you're not getting back so much on defense because you're scoring so quickly, and the other team might be trying to play fast too. And I think that's what equated that a lot of times. But I think you saw some stretches where Alabama's defense actually shined. I think they're towards the end of the game. I think they kind of strayed off a bit. But I mean, I think one of their largest leads was like 19 or 20 points or something like that. And those were credited because Alabama scored so much because they were getting out in transition because of the defense. The defense led to some easy offense. I think their defense does definitely need some work. But I saw some stretches on Wednesday night where I think they actually improved on the defensive side. Of course, shooting always helps. When you're shooting good and you have to recognize the fact that they can be a threat from the outside, that actually does alter things a little bit for Ole Miss. But I think a lot of those easy buckets, you saw Shaq get to the layups. You saw Quinterly. I mean, you saw J.D. Davidson. And we're going to talk about that. I mean, that was probably one of his best games, maybe his best game he's played since he's been in the Crimson Tide uniform. So, I mean, and I think that was a credit because they played better on defense. Your shot blockers, Bediako was getting blocks. Gary was getting involved on blocks. You had guys that were playing physical down low. They were avoiding fouling. In fact, Nate Oates actually towards the end of I think it was the first half or in the second half, he was actually yelling and you could hear it on the crowd, like, stop fouling, because they were playing such great defense, but they were playing pretty aggressive. So I think the coach admires the effort on defense, but at one point they were up by 15 and they were getting some silly foul calls because they're just playing hard. So I mean, I think that Alabama knew that Wednesday night was probably a must win for them because they are on that borderline of they are a 6 seed, but maybe they're one of the last 4 teams in. So trying to fight that, because they do have some quality wins and those are keeping them alive. But if you lose Wednesday night, that's kind of a tough asterisk against you, I think, for that resume. So I think Nate Oates and the team knew that. And but yeah, I think the team just played better. And obviously it's better when you don't shoot 4 for 30 or 3 for 30, whatever that was at Kentucky. So
hey, everything looks better when you have a good shooting night. I think they shot like 60-something% from 3, made 14 threes. Everything looks better. Everything's fixed when you're making shots. So that definitely plays into it. Like I said, Nate Oates even had comments after the game. The defense needs to step it up a little bit, play a little bit smarter, play a little bit better, because Ole Miss was without like 2 or 3 of their best players that night. So not only was they just allowed Ole Miss, they scored 97 points. They shot great. There's not a lot to look at and say like, ooh, that was a bad game. But you allow 83, 84 points to an Ole Miss team without 2 or 3 of their, I can't remember which of their best scorers. It just doesn't look good because Ole Miss isn't a really great team this year either. So you just got to tighten that up, especially when you have Arkansas coming to town. The last thing I'll point out with Alabama before we move on to UAB is that I think that Alabama could be out in the round of 64, or they can make it all the way to New Orleans. I think there's no telling with this team. We talked about it. I mean, they're a roller coaster, man. They're a roller coaster. So are they hitting their threes? Are they playing defense? It depends game to game. So we'll see how they play with Arkansas coming off a great win and a Arkansas team playing better than they did at the beginning of the year.
They've won 8 or 9 in a row now. I think
they've won a lot. They played a lot better recently than they did to start the year. So we'll see with Musselman. Let's see if Musselman can keep his shirt on in Coleman. So let's move on to UAB, the other team in the state. Of course, we got to talk about them. I wrote this down, Cole, and you can attest to it. I just wrote Jelly Walker's electric. I mean, he is absolutely so much fun to watch. I think I talked about it before. I think Wendell Green and him remind me so much of Jared Harper. They're smaller guys, 5'11". They're shooting the lights out. He's shooting from the logo. He's taking 2 steps past half court and he's pulling and he's hitting those. I mean, that's just unheard of. And granted, he takes like 18, 20 shots a game, but hey, if they're falling at the clip he's shooting them, why not shoot them? I mean, he's scored 25 or more in 7 of the last 8 games. That's unheard of in college basketball. He's making UAB, a mid-major school, hit all kinds of stories, hit the map, look like they're in the first 4 out. They've been that, I think, in the last like 3 or 4 brackets. I think really if they can win out and they can make it to the 3rd round or the championship round in the Conference USA tournament, I think they have a really good shot of making an at-large bid. But honestly, I think the way they're playing right now, Quan Jackson.
They may not lose in the conference tournament for real, though.
Quan Jackson
would mark it out.
Quan Jackson, with the way he's playing defense, the steals he's getting, the rebounds. I mean, he's a near double machine in points and rebounds, and defensively, he's just such an asset to have. I mean, I think they're starting 5. I read it. They're like in the top 3 in the country in plus points. They're starting 5, or it may not be their starting 5, but it's one of their 5-man lineups. They're top 3 in the country. So the way that Andy Kennedy has them playing right now, I think there's no reason they shouldn't win the conference tournament. There's no reason they shouldn't win out, and there's no reason they shouldn't make some noise come March and maybe get a win in the round of 64. The UAB is another team where they have some head scratchers there, where they lost to Marshall, they lost to Rice, but if they're playing in Bartow,
have a chance though to redeem a lot of those losses, of course, at home, because I know Rice is coming, of course, to Bartow next week. And look, you're able to lose a few games on the road because I think the committee values more if you lose on the road, whether if you lose at home, because I think they feel like you should win at home, especially if it gets an inferior opponent. So we'll see how it goes moving forward. I mean, like we said in the rundown, Louisiana Tech really your only last remaining opponent. You can kind of.
I messed that up because they have North Texas coming too. So North Texas and La Tech are the 2, right? Because North Texas right now, believe it or not, even though UAB beat North Texas because UAB has those other losses in the conference, North Texas is the number 1 seed in the conference right now. So that's a huge game for North Texas coming to Bartow Arena. Of course, UAB is 13-0 this season at Bartow. So that's huge, having North Texas and La Tech come to Bartow after already beating them in Louisiana and in Texas. So huge games coming up for them. That'll mean a lot for the bracket coming up. And of course, the conference bracket and the actual NCAA bracket. So I think there's just excitement around.
Should be fun to watch.
Excitement around the UAB team this year. And Jelly Walker, man, he's playing himself into a season here. He's played
having
well
a great
all season.
But I will say this. I mean, you always have your stars, but the thing about UAB is they're just so deep. When you have a guy like Taven Lovin, you have KJ Buff, and you have these guys who are coming off the bench, or maybe they're starting at times. I mean, when you have those guys that can rotate and get their points, even when Jordan Walker is on the bench, you have an Ertl, you have a Jamal Johnson who can hit threes coming off of Jordan Walker. I mean, when you have that kind of a threat and you're that deep, I mean, that's hard to beat, Stephen. When you have a guy who can literally take 5 to 10 minutes off from in a half and then come back in and they still have a lead. So, I mean, that's just why they're so dangerous.
I was listening to another podcast this week, and they were talking about how, man, Ole Miss might be missing some Andy Kennedy because they were a little bit frustrated with him not being able to make the tournament or making the tournament, never winning a game kind of thing. But man, are they missing some Andy Kennedy after they've had some rough years since he left. So I'm very interested to see how UAB does, and let's see if they can keep it up. And you can talk about Taven Lovin too. I mean, there's you can go 1 through 8 with this team, similar to Auburn, where Auburn can go 1 through 10. They're a very deep team, and man, you can talk about that any one of those starting 5 and talk about the season.
I can't remember a time, Stephen, in my lifetime. I can't remember a time where all 3 schools, Alabama, Auburn, and UAB, had 3 just basketball teams where they're all very entertaining to watch. They're all good. They're all entertaining to watch.
You can maybe point to the 90s with Alabama and UAB, but really Auburn wasn't that good then. So I think you're exactly right, Cole. I mean, every single team is electric to watch, whether it's Alabama, if they're going to have a good game or a bad game. UAB's got to have
all 3 of them in the NCAA tournment this year. That would be crazy.
Hey, I hope one of them gets to play each other. That would be makes for some great TV.
Awesome. Well, there's a big game this week, though, Stephen, isn't there?
Huge.
It's a pretty big game.
We got to talk about it. Of course, we kind of skipped it last week because with the big games coming up this week, I thought what better to lead up to the Super Bowl than talk a little bit about the Bengals and the Rams this week. Cole, we'll start with the Bengals. What did you take away from the? We didn't even talk about it, so let's just kind of break it down really quick of what you took away from the AFC Championship game.
Well, I think the biggest thing is, Stephen, we have seen Joe Burrow just become that dude. He's Joe Shiesty, he's Joe Burt, whatever you want to call him. I mean, all these nicknames are floating around, but this guy is just unfazed. He never seems overwhelmed. The moment just never have seemed too big for this guy, Stephen. Ever since the year he went on with LSU and won that national title, he has just played in big games and had big game after big game, and he's rose to the occasion with a bad offensive line. And, he has some weapons as far as his receivers go, but with a bad offensive line and kind of an up and down defense as far as how this team has played, he has been kind of the emotional weight that's kept this team kind of afloat. And he has played well throughout the season. I mean, had it not been for, just an outstanding year from Rodgers and Brady, I mean, you could make a case for Joe Burrow for MVP this year in the NFL. I mean, there are people out there who still think he might be the NFL MVP. So, I mean, I think in that AFC Championship game, of course, we can talk about the collapse of the Kansas City Chiefs in the second half, only 3 points in the second half after 21 in the first half. Where did those points go? What happened to Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs? But I think it really was just the fact that the Bengals made the adjustments in the second half. Zach Taylor, what a great job as a head coach he has done of making adjustments in the second half to find a way to get, these guys in this Bengals defense to find ways to get stops for the Chiefs and give Joe Burrow the ball back and find ways to get those other guys. Even when Ja'Marr Chase. Ja'Marr Chase.
Ja'Marr Chase. You're right.
I don't know why I was thinking of Jordan Jefferson for a second. I was like, wait, who am I thinking of? It's a different LSU wide receiver, right?
Justin Jefferson or Jordan Jefferson?
Justin Jefferson. Sorry.
Too many Jeffersons.
There's too many guys. But anyways, even when Ja'Marr Chase was not open, you find different ways to get other guys the ball. So the Bengals, I mean, they just did an outstanding job, and I can't believe they're here. This is one of the most improbable Super Bowl runs I can remember, Stephen. This doesn't seem like it should be real that the Bengals are in the Super Bowl.
It reminds me of the Giants back when they were beating the Patriots. They were a mediocre team in the regular season, and then when the playoffs hit, they just turned into a different team, defensively and offensively. So that's what this reminds me of a little bit. And of course, you touched on it. I think Zach Taylor's done a great job of adjusting the offense, especially getting the ball out quicker because he knows his offensive line isn't going to hold up. And then of course the defensive adjustments. We can take away from Kansas City, like you said, but I think you really just all credit to the defensive line of Cincinnati and just the way they played against Patrick Mahomes. They even got an interception after, everybody's screaming about Kansas City, they need to change the rules because Kansas City's just going to win because they won the coin toss again. And of course, the Bengals get an interception. And we can talk all day about everything else, but of course, Evan McPherson, just goes out there and
isn't he the best drafted kicker? I mean, like that's why you draft a kicker, right?
For lack of a better term, Cole, he just goes out there and drops his nuts on everybody and says, "Look at me, I'm confident. I got this." So it looks like we're going to the AFC Championship. Looks like we're going to the Super Bowl. He's ready. He is ready.
That is a confidence builder for a team when your kicker has that kind of confidence that he can make any kick at any point in the game.
Hey, we talked about it before. I think every sports show ever has talked about confidence and mentality is key for kickers. Evan McPherson having that mentality, Joe Burrow having the mentality he does. I think that's because we're going to talk about it later. But honestly, I think that's the X factor for the Bengals.
The swag.
Cole, to be honest with you, I actually had a different point to make for the X factor, but honestly, I think the confidence, the next play up, like let's forget about what just happened for Joe Burrow, for Evan McPherson, and I think that's rubbed off on the entire team. You can talk about Ja'Marr Chase, Joe Mixon. You can talk about the offensive line moving forward. You can talk about the defense and Sam Hubbard getting that strip sack. You can talk about whatever you want to, but I think that just mentality of so what? Let's go out there and play our game. Let's not worry about anything else. We're gonna be okay.
So you would say the X factor is the confidence of the Bengals, kind of just like we're here, we've made the plays to get here, and now we feel like we're ready for the Super Bowl. I see. Now I'm gonna go a different route. I'm gonna say the X factor. I mean, I like your point though. I like that because that swagger is definitely what you need when you go up against a juggernaut like the Rams are, which is how much of a favorite are they? Are they a 3.5 4 point favorite? Okay. My big thing for the Bengals is what happens when Jalen Ramsey locks down Ja'Marr Chase on some plays. What happens when he has him guarded? Can he require a double team? Are you going to take multiple defenders with Ja'Marr Chase, or is Jalen Ramsey able to just take him away single coverage? Because that's going to require, if you're able to man coverage the Bengals receivers and you don't have that kind of time, because let's face it, Steven, this defensive line with Aaron Donald, with Von Miller, with all these different guys for the Rams. And going up against this offensive line, Joe Burrow's just not going to have the time. So can Ja'Marr Chase and get some help from the other receivers? I think the X factor is your T. Higgins, your Tyler Boyds. It just got announced CJ Uzomah, he's out. Or not out. I'm sorry, not CJ Uzomah. Tyler Higbee's out. I'm sorry, not CJ Uzomah. I'm sorry, Tyler Higbee. I'm thinking of the wrong tight end. Sorry. Anyways, but my X factor, of course, is the other guys, not named Ja'Marr Chase. Those guys, Joe Mixon's, the Tyler Boyds, the CJ Uzomahs, those guys have got to step up. Those are my X factors for this.
No, I think that's a great point, Cole. And I think the other thing to think about is what if Jalen Ramsey, just locks down one of the other receivers and they end up double teaming Ja'Marr Chase. So I think that would be my game plan if I'm the Rams.
Put him in the slot.
Yeah, we'll have Jalen Ramsey get somebody else, lock down T. Higgins, and then have a double team Ja'Marr Chase, and let's see what they can do with that, kind of thing. But then my X factor going into it though was going to be Joe Mixon. Can he get some running room? Can you kind of establish the run and give everybody else a break with that? He's played well.
Take some pressure off Joe Burrow with the running game.
Exactly.
Sure.
Take some pressure off the offensive line from pass blocking every play too. Let him get a chance to push forward rather than backing up every play. So let's move on to the Rams. And Cole, we saw in the NFC Championship, I thought they might choke it away again with the 49ers, that we talked about it leading up to it, about how the 49ers just have their number. The Rams pulled it out though. The defense, we can talk about their offense being able to score some points. The defense played great. And to be honest, those last two drives, of course we could talk about the dropped interception the 49ers had that could have changed the entire way we're thinking and talking right now.
Game. Absolutely.
But they don't. Matthew Stafford, comes back from that, goes next play up mentality, throws a touchdown later on, and then the defense was just able to stuff the 49ers. We talk about what's the quarterback for the 49ers? I'm blanking right now.
Jimmy Garoppolo.
Jimmy Garoppolo. Yeah. We can talk about him and how he just looked utterly lost in those last two possessions.
Apart from Joe Burrow, who didn't look overwhelmed, Jimmy Garoppolo looked overwhelmed the entire game.
And hey, that shows to the Rams defensive line and how great they are at just putting pressure on the quarterback. So what are they going to do? What are the Bengals going to be able to do to stop that? So
Yeah.
Let me ask you this, because we didn't see as much consistency as we wanted to from the Rams against the 49ers. But how can the Rams be more consistent on offense and keep the Bengals from keeping it close? Because I think if the Bengals keep it close, the Rams have a great chance of choking the game away.
I like that point. I'm gonna go off of what you said with Joe Mixon. I think a way that you can kind of prevent choking and prevent a Buccaneers type of game and prevent that happening. Number one, don't fumble the football.
Right.
Don't let Cam Akers kill you with fumbles. But I do think Cam Akers and Sony Michel are going to be big factors for the Rams, because I mean, obviously you have the threat of Cooper Kupp, OBJ, Van Jefferson, those guys. Tyler Higbee, like I said earlier, he is out. Not CJ Uzomah, Tyler Higbee. So you do have one of your pass
Bolden
catchers.
Is the X factor.
so you don't have Tyler Higbee. So hey, to make my point, that's one less pass catcher you don't have, Steven. So I think that puts a little bit more emphasis on the Rams establishing that running game. Don't turn the ball over and give more chances for Joe Burrow in the offense to find the end zone, but also take more time off the clock and control the game with your ground and pound offense. You kind of have a very balanced offense, I feel like, with the Rams, a little more balanced, I think, than the Bengals are. So I think if you're the Rams, I think a healthy dose of Sony Michel. I mean, obviously you want to have the big plays over the top with OBJ and Cooper Kupp, but that middle ground, that middle game, the first and second down, are you establishing the line of scrimmage? I think that's the big thing for the Rams moving forward, is establish that line of scrimmage and establish your dominance early and be the physical team.
No, I think that's a great point. Be the physical team. The Rams have shown they get kind of manhandled a little bit, especially on the offensive line when they're not physical. They got to establish the run. You're exactly right. The X factor for me, for the Rams, I'm going to go, it's their linebackers. So not only Von Miller, but those inside linebackers. I'm going to not be able to say their names right now because I'm blanking. But just those inside linebackers and being able to stop that Joe Mixon, being able to stop that middle game for the Bengals, because I think if you can double team Ja'Marr Chase and put, just lock down somebody with Jalen Ramsey, I think if you are able to do that and just have help over the top, I think your linebackers are going to be a major key in stopping just the Bengals from keeping moving forward.
Underneath routes, right?
And of course, we can talk about Aaron Donald and Von Miller.
Of course, that's an obvious one, though, right? I mean, that's a little too obvious.
I think your linebackers defensively, because I think the Rams, like you said, if they can maintain some consistency on offense, I don't think there's an X factor necessarily looking for. Of course, you have Odell Beckham and Cooper Kupp and Cam Akers and Sony Michel and Matthew Stafford. You can name off whoever you want to on the offense. I don't think that's really an X factor. I think that's kind of, they need to play well because it's a Super Bowl. But I think your X factor are your linebackers, who are a little bit not as spoken about as your defensive line or your corners and your safeties. So let's see some play from them. And I think that's what really can change the game for the Rams.
Absolutely. So, Steven, the big question, here we go. Who wins the game? I mean, this is the Super Bowl. What do you got?
I got the Rams -4, man. I think that their defensive line, and the Bengals offensive line, that's going to be the story all week, and it has been the story all week, and it's going to be the story leading up to Sunday afternoon when it finally kicks off. I think that'll be the difference. I just think the Rams are the better team. I think the Bengals have been on a great run. I think they've played their asses off. I think that we can talk about Joe Burrow, Evan McPherson, Joe Mixon, Ja'Marr Chase all we want. We can talk about their defensive line stepping up, but I just think that once you run into enough talent, consistency, because the Kansas City Chiefs, great offensively, their defense isn't anything good. The Rams have some balance on offense and defense, so I think that all of that is just a little bit too much. And of course, Sean McVay finally will get his Super Bowl win and show that you can go all in every single year and it work out. So it's interesting too, because, of course, Zach Taylor is former assistant of Sean McVay. He was the quarterback's coach when the Rams only scored 3 points in the Super Bowl. So I'm interested to see both of them having Super Bowl experience. If either one of them have that in the back of their head, like, oh gosh, we got to do better than we did last time we were here. So that's the kind of other factor to think here. Who you got, Cole?
I mean, come on, Steven. I mean, it's at SoFi Stadium. I mean, and I feel like this is kind of like the story that Detroit built. I mean, you got Eminem is performing, and then you got Matthew Stafford. Let's call it like it is. Matthew Stafford has been built for this playoff run and for this moment through his years at Detroit. The struggle and the constant. I mean, this man had come from behind wins, had amazing competitive games in Detroit when he had no talent. I mean, even when Calvin Johnson is the only player he had on the team, he made games competitive. He was built for this moment, and I think this is his time to get his ring. The Bengals will have their time. I think that they'll be a team we'll have to put up with for another 5 to 10 years. I think Zach Taylor and Joe Burrow will have this team competitive even in the next few years. But this Rams team is just a beast. I just don't see how with this defensive line. I mean, this is pretty much a Titans game, I think, but with a better offense, because you had 9 sacks given up against the Titans, but the Titans just couldn't score. This Rams team can. So if you allow 8 to 9 sacks against the Rams, it's going to be a long day for you. I'm with you. I think it's the Rams, and I think they do cover. I think it's close for the first half, but I think in the second half, I think the Rams pull away.
Speaking of the Stafford days, I saw today that Detroit has some Detroit Rams shirts in some stores. So all time having a lion crossed with the Ram in Detroit colors, Detroit Rams. You got to take a W wherever you can. If you're
wherever you can find the silver lining, you have to find it, Steve.
So Cole, I have some prop bets. I don't know if you have any prop bets you would like to point out. I have a couple that I think will hit, that I am betting myself because I'm confident in it. I love to place like 8 bets or something on the Super Bowl just to be in it the whole game. It's the last football season. But
it's fun. It makes it more entertaining for you. Yeah.
Last football game of the season. I like to just throw it all at the table and hopefully one sticks. So for prop bets, I got touchdown scores. I got Joe Mixon and Odell Beckham, kind of one on both sides. I think that Odell has scored like 6 of his last 7 games. I mean, they love to throw it to him in the red zone, love to throw in the long ball.
So you're saying Joe Mixon and Odell lead the team in touchdowns, or
no, just to score a touchdown. So they don't have to do anything else.
So you're betting that those guys score.
Correct.
Correct. Okay, gotcha.
And then, of course, Joe Mixon, I think, needs to have a good game. I think they're going to rely on him a little bit to give their offensive line a break and not be in pass protection the whole time. Because if you are doing that, and it's going to be just if you're a one-dimensional team, it's going to be a long day, like you said, Cole. So I got that. So they had some really interesting ones for halftime, like what color shoes Snoop Dogg's going to wear. Will Eminem be in a hoodie or a hat? Will Eminem need to be censored? They have, of course, the coin toss.
So yes. All the above.
Of course, they have the Gatorade color and everything like that. And of course, they have the national anthem length of time. It's a minute 35 for those interested. They literally have called the national anthem singer a quickie because I forget it's a he or she, but they are so quick at singing the national anthem. That it's really, really fast. So
bet the under on the minute 35 then, right?
But the last 11 Super Bowls have gone over a minute and 35. So you kind of have to play both of those into effect there.
Steven stat of the day. There we
go. There you go. Where you want to take that? I'm not taking anything like that. I am taking though the first penalty. I got a false start. First penalty, jitters, everybody's
for Super Bowl. Yeah, that makes sense. I'd say a false
starts are pretty common. It's like plus 450 or something like that. It's a great odds for that. And then my last one, other than I am betting the Rams -4 just to cover and have that bet on the table. The first points by the Bengals is a field goal. I'm betting that. First points scored by the Bengals is a field goal.
I was just about to say, if I had to bet my money, I think my prop bet would be that Evan McPherson is the first Bengal that scores a point in the Super Bowl. If I had to bet money, I'm going to say it's Evan McPherson.
That's what I got too, Cole. You have any prop bets you'd like to point out, or did I nail them all?
I think you nailed them all. I like the touchdown scores, but I will say this: I don't think it's Joe Mixon that scores a touchdown for the Bengals. I don't think that Joe Mixon is going to get a touchdown this game, Steven. If I'm being honest with you, I don't think that the Bengals will be able to run the football that well. So, and that's one of the reasons I picked the Rams to win it. So I don't think that Joe Mixon is going to score unless he scores it as a receiving touchdown. As far as a rushing touchdown, I don't know. I think once you get inside the red zone, I think it's going to be tough to score. So
I just figured that the Bengals would have at least 1 or 2 possessions near the goal line. You just hand it in to Joe Mixon. Let's see what he can do, or maybe a screenplay because you're relying on your offensive line to not be able to hold up well. Maybe you get some kind of screenplay in there and Mixon gets off of that. I just feel like he touches the ball too much to not get in the end zone once for the Bengals.
Hey, here's an over-under on the amount of TikTok stars that are at the Super Bowl. That would be a good prop bet for me.
Oh, that's a great one.
TikTok stars here.
That's a great one, man. It'll be
is Addison Ray here? I mean, who's at the Super Bowl? I would love. I can't wait. Who knows? This is great to watch and see.
Jackson Mahomes might show up just for the clout.
Yeah, Jackson Mahomes might still be there anyways. Who knows? It'll just be fun to watch no matter what. So,
Cole,
so me and Steven both on the Rams.
Yes, that'll wrap up our Super Bowl kind of predictions there. I think we're both on the Rams. I'm interested to see how it plays out. Of course, we have the Bengals team of destiny, and the Rams are the super team put together by McVay yet again. So let's see how they do. Very interesting, very exciting. Ready to watch it. 5:30 Sunday. Let's go. Hopefully, we'll have my prop bets. I'm hoping to make a social media about the prop bets and our bets and our picks for the Super Bowl. So we can put those out on social media sometime before the game Sunday. That'll be cool. But of course, I think that'll wrap up our show, Cole.
Wraps it up.
For me and Cole, we love you guys. Thanks for listening. Go subscribe to YouTube, subscribe to wherever you listen to your podcast. Of course, this audio will all be there. And tune in next time as we probably wrap up the Super Bowl and talk about that and figure out what we're going to talk about without football, Cole, because me and you
conference tournament madness and March Madness is just around the corner, Stephen.
There we go, baby.
We'll have to worry about that.
There we go. We might bring up some movie talk again. Who knows?
Who knows? Until next time, we'll see you guys.